Looking at all the numbers, and as acknowledged openly in the text, anybody can see that amassing tons of treasure is fundamental to the game, because simply, if we're thinking about experience points and we're thinking about levels, the monsters aren't going to cut it. You need fistfuls, handfuls, roomfuls, tombs full of riches. So I talked about placement of treasure in one of the previous musings, number 3. And now I want to talk simply about what you do when you have it, or what one may do with it, because in the player's handbook at the very end, there's a little section about the division of treasure among player characters with a really iconic illustration by Dave Sutherland, which kind of is like a little committee meeting. It's like, all right, look, we have all this stuff now. What shall we do with it? And it's not very satisfying. The basic concept is, well, let's be fair. That's fine. There are a couple of different things one might do to define fair. For example, you might multiply shares by levels. There's some talk of making parcels and then rolling off to see who gets which parcel, stuff like that. But it misses a few important points, specifically the fact that plenty of treasure is highly customized. Magical items being enormous banks of experience points on their own. I'm not even talking about what they can do. I'm just talking about these banks of experience points. Well, it does matter what they can do, because many of them are class specific, or if you have multiple members of one class, different people may want the same one, whatever. The point is that clearly we're faced with a little bit of a conundrum. And then let's step away from this idea that the group is collectively looking at a pile. I'm talking about in the fiction, collectively looking at a pile and deciding what to do with it. Instead, especially if we're playing along the lines of how the particular group that I'm in is playing, where different characters may happen upon different amounts and types of treasure at different times. We may be playing across different locations at the same time, where this person's off doing this and this other person is off doing that. And in that circumstance, which is allowed for in the discussion in the DM's guide of how to play, in fact, it's highly encouraged in some places, what do you do then with this concept of the division of treasure? Well, you could just do it completely naturalistically. Whoever comes upon it and has their paws on it, they get that. Then we have this issue of experience points, which is really the interesting part, in my opinion, where first, let's follow the logic of monster experience points, where the idea is that whoever participated in defeating a monster, even if they missed every time, even if they did very little more than cover their head and squeak and try to get out of the way, but whatever, they were in the mix while this monster was defeated, they get their share. So you divide up the monster's experience points by everybody who participated in that. Now, this has worked out pretty well in our case. Not every character has been involved in the defeat of every foe, and there are several foes who were not defeated, so no points for them. But for the ones who were, it's pretty easy to say, okay, well, these are the characters who were involved in that one. So, for example, we had several characters who fought the coffer corpses. They got the experience points for the coffer corpses. Back to the point. How do we do this in regard to treasure? Do we simply say this amount of treasure was with this creature, and the people who, defeated the creature, they're the ones who get to divide it up? Or do we think of it at a much more macro scale? We look at all the treasure that anybody got throughout the entire session or unit of play that we're accounting for, and we simply say, all right, this is the whole mass. Who cares whose pockets it's in? Who cares anything about it? This is the full amount, and we're just going to divide it up by everybody, and that's how we're going to deal with treasure. So these are pretty interesting questions. And remember, I'm not talking about the coins themselves. I'm talking about the experience points for them. one could quite fairly say, all right, this horn of blowing a mighty wind has been acquired by us, and Count Bob is going to have it, but divide at those experience points just like you would for slaying a monster, and everybody's going to get 1/5. There's 5 of us. There's 1/5 will go to each character. Is that the way we do it? These are simply decisions that one or a group decides upon, and they have to be made. You have to decide, how is this done? Now, one more wrinkle comes in, which is extremely relevant in our case. Thieves represent a fascinating instance. Let's keep it really simple. All 5 characters participate in the defeat of a foe, and just to make things incredibly easy, the foe had a bag of coins right there on the table, sitting there, ready to be taken as soon as it was defeated. They nabbed the coins. Now we have all this gold. Let's even make it easier. It's all gold coins. Fantastic. So no calculations or whatever. We look at this, and one could easily say, all right, if there are 500 gold coins, then each of us will get 100, and that's that. Well, let's think about this for a moment. Case 1, Thiefly character, having achieved the table before anyone else did, seizes a couple of handfuls of the coins. We might even roll for that, and they manage to sequester 50 coins. So that when we eventually show up at the table as a group, oh, look, everybody, there's 450 coins in this bag. While, the thief has stuffed the 50 coins into their pants previously. Now, in that circumstance, one could easily say the thief gets 50 more experience points. We'll divide up the 450 among us. Everybody gets their bit. And then, as it turns out, the Thiefly character has these extra 50 and gets 50 more experience points. So that's one way to do it. Now, for the other interesting point, what if we divide it all up, and then we find, sooner or later, perhaps sometime later, the cleric looks into their wallet and discovers that their alleged 100 coins that they thought they had in there has somehow become mysteriously less. And the thief, happens to have bought a new pair of rather fine boots or something of the sort. Never mind the interactions among the characters about this. Let's go back and think about experience points. How do we do it? One way to do it is to say, well, we divided them all up fairly, and then the theft is its own act later. Has nothing to do with the primary division of the treasure and the experience points, which is what we care about at the moment. Everybody got their share. But the thief, having done this new act, has acquired a bunch of gold coins from who knows where, doesn't matter, but just because they've already been accounted for in experience points, even including the thief, doesn't matter. This is a whole new situation, and the thief has lifted these coins they didn't have before, and they get experience points now for those. That's kind of interesting too. It's not quite parallel to the situation where the thief lifted it first and got all those coins and the experience points just for themselves, if that's the way you want to do it. So as you can see, there's a bunch of little dials or variables about the timing of these things. Should a given gold coin, basically carry its value as an experience point, and that's the only experience point it ever will be valuable for, or is it sort of on tap for more experience point bestowal? In particular, if a thief nabs it before or after someone else does. So this is quite a bit of a question. All I can say is there's no known way to do this properly except the way you like. And in our case, I tend to be favoring the thiefly thing. And so therefore, our thief in the game, Hazel, definitely is, climbing up the treasure-based experience point pole a little quicker than everybody else, simply because Hazel has been known to nab a thing or two. And just to add a detail on top of that, at one point, just as she was, reaching out for this pile of gems in the scary serial killer temple chamber place, when the very, 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 very good fighter cleric Hork kind of leans in and says, "Oh, look, a bunch of gems." And it turns out that turns into equitable treasure division, or rather a deal cut between the two of them. No theft is on the table, no matter how the gems got distributed actually physically. Now it is treasure, group-wise, once Hork leaned in, noted it, and dealt himself into saying, let's figure out what to do with these. In which case, the experience points at that point, I said, just went out to everybody as they should. So make your own choice, of course, when you're playing the game, but you're going to have to do the game design for this.